I've realised recently that when I return home from being somewhere else, I've started unpacking like someone who expects to leave again. I didn't do it consciously at first, more in small decisions that didn't fully make sense until I stepped back and looked at them properly. There are still unopened boxes in our apartment here in Frankfurt. We moved 6 months ago. Some of those boxes are full of books, things that aren't urgent, the kinds of things connected more to settling than simply functioning. My husband finally put up half the bookshelves recently, and I filled them almost immediately because I missed seeing our books around us. The other half, though, is still unfinished, still leaning against the wall, and the remaining boxes are still sitting there, unopened. Honestly, it bothers me more than I expected. In previous moves, we unpacked rather quickly. Even when places weren't perfect, there was still this sense of trying to build a life there properly, especially when we still had the bunnies. We wanted them to settle in fast. We wanted routines back. We wanted home to feel like home again as fast as possible. This most recent move has felt different from the beginning. Before we moved to Frankfurt, my husband had already lost his previous job. Around the same period, we lost Bobo, our final bunny. And by the time we left Salzburg, I think I was already emotionally tired in a way I hadn't fully acknowledged yet. Salzburg had become deeply woven into my life. My friendships there felt real and steady. It was familiar. It held years of routines and memories. It also held the loss of 3 of our bunnies, Forrest, Olaf and then Bobo. Leaving Austria didn't feel like leaving a location. It felt like leaving an entire chapter of life. And then we arrived in Frankfurt and immediately started rebuilding again. A new apartment, new routines, new city. Learning everything from scratch again. And slowly, I did begin settling here. One thing that mattered far more than I expected was finally having a proper office space. In Salzburg, my office was directly under the roof, freezing in winter and unbearably hot in summer. I spent years adjusting around the environment just to try and work half comfortably. So having a workspace here that simply functioned properly felt emotionally relieving in a way I didn't fully anticipate. And then, just as I started relaxing into Frankfurt slightly, my husband has lost his job again. And almost immediately, I noticed something shift in me internally. Don't unpack too quickly. Don't get too attached. Don't build too deeply into this life in case you have to leave again soon. None of those thoughts arrived with a sudden bang. They felt logical, practical even, and yet underneath them was something entirely different. Repeatedly, instability changes how you relate to permanence. You still function. You still organise the paperwork, learn the transport systems, find the new supermarkets, rebuild your routines. Outwardly, you probably look adaptable, capable, flexible. Internally, however, something quieter begins happening. You stop fully emotionally arriving. Part of you stays prepared for departure. And I think a lot of women living abroad quietly recognise this, even if they don't always talk about it openly. The constant rebuilding takes something from you over time. Not because life abroad is bad. There are beautiful parts of it. There's growth in it, perspective, experiences you wouldn't otherwise have. Repeated instability, however, also teaches your nervous system not to trust permanence too deeply. You start hesitating before creating roots. You hold back slightly from attachment because losing it again feels possible. And after enough change, that cautiousness can become so normal you barely notice it anymore. I notice it now in the unfinished bookshelves, in the unopened boxes of books, in how quickly my mind mentally prepares for leaving before I've even fully arrived. And it creates a kind of tiredness, that rest that simply will not fix, because it isn't just physical. It's the ongoing adjustment underneath everything, the feeling of always rebuilding emotionally while still trying to function normally on the surface. I've realised lately how much it helps simply having space to acknowledge that honestly. Sometimes that happens through one-to-one support and healing sessions where women start recognising how much of their behaviour has quietly become self-protection after years of instability. And sometimes the deeper layer underneath it is fear itself, not an obvious kind of fear, more the gradual fear of trusting something fully when experience has taught you that it may not stay. That's partly why the self-healing bundle around overcoming the fear of change feels relevant to this stage of life, because repeated instability changes your relationship with safety in ways that are easy to miss while you're busy adapting. What I keep coming back to is this: physically arriving somewhere and emotionally settling there, they're not the same thing. Sometimes you don't realise how emotionally half-packed you've become until even unpacking books starts feeling heavier than it should.